sunglasses on, but that's.
She will, don't worry.
Not yet, but I will.
Okay. So,
Oh, and everybody knows they're being recorded. You're okay with that?
yes.
Yes, okay, great. Okay. Just check, gotta do that. And it is 1:11.
It is 1:11 and we have a forum. Peggy's got the recorder going. Everyone's looks like we're gonna have a good meeting today. Looks like we have good attendance here. I'm gonna go around the room here and Martha. I don't know if everybody can see us clearly, but we have Peggy here. Peggy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Peggy O'Brien. I'm the local governments manager at the Rio Grande Council of Governments, and I work with you all, the water planning and economic development and workforce development and anything else that comes over the transom.
And virtual computer expert.
Well, not an expert, but
Well,
thanks for being patient.
okay, next.
I'm Heather with the Texas Water Development Board.
Dave Hall with the planning group representing the public.
I'm Scott Reinert with El Paso Water Utilities, and I'm the, guess I'm the chairman. So can everybody still hear? Can you do thumbs up if you can hear me? Good. Thank you.
Great.
Right?
Hi, I'm Jeff Bennett. I'm with the Rio Grande Joint Venture. I work with landowners to improve grassland, stream habitat, and I sit in the environment chair here on the board for the group.
I'm Albert Miller, City of Valentine, representing water utilities. Sean Woodard, with the Marathon Refinery, representing industries.
Robert Halpern, Rio Grande Council of Governments, Workforce and Economic Development here at the Marfa office.
Finishing the pizza. Cody Bjornson with the Texas Water Development Board. I work in groundwater monitoring, oversee water level programs, measure water levels, take samples, measure flow of springs, predominantly in West Texas now.
Very good. Let's hear from our virtual attendees. I'll start with, I see Juan up there. Go ahead.
Thanks, Scott. I'm Juan Acevedo, technical consultant with WSP. I will pass it on to my colleague also from WSP, Jacqueline.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Hi, my name. Oh, sorry, my camera is not working right now. My name is Jacqueline Pacheco. I'm also a consultant with WSP. I'll be helping Juan and Jennifer with this project. I'm excited to be here at this meeting with you all.
I'm John Albright with Freeze and Nichols, also part of the consulting team.
I'm Crystal Williams, part of Freeze and Nichols as well, and part of the consulting team.
Yeah. If you haven't introduced yourself, please do. I don't have a full screen of seeing the virtual attendees, so.
Randy Barker, Hudson County Underground Water District.
Randy Barker.
Summer Webb. I'm really not sure who I'm representing anymore.
Hi,
Jay Ornelas, District in El Paso,
Hard to hear.
representing water districts.
Maybe do you want to just follow?
Okay.
Becky Brewster and Van Horn, representing municipalities. Teresa Todd. I represent counties, live in Jeff Davis County.
And did Sarah say hi? Sarah Lee?
Good afternoon, Sarah Lee, Texas Water Development Board.
And Haley, did you say hi? Yeah. I think has everybody said hello?
I'm
Katie,
Katie Dahlberg, Texas Water Development Board.
Let Jay Ornella say hi again.
Oh yeah, Jay, hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, Jay Hornelas with the Irrigation District in El Paso and representing water districts.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Scott.
Do you think we got everybody?
I think so.
We got a pretty good
real
size
quick.
group today.
Oh,
Michael
sorry.
Flo-
Yeah.
Michael Flores, Lower Valley Water District.
Thanks, Michael.
And I'm Alex Fashing, Water Conservation Specialist with El Paso Water.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, that's our welcome. We're on to item 2. Approval of minutes from the meeting held on July 13th.
Michelle Foss.
She's with the board. You're gonna call up the minutes, Peggy?
Oh, this is the problem.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Minutes.
We assume that was a late eye.
Yeah, well,
Was a late eye.
Okay.
yeah, John, that was a late one, right?
Yeah.
It's a late yes. Okay, so motion passes, minutes are approved. Okay, next we're on item 3. This has a discussion and consider taking action on recommendations to fill vacant positions. Yes, we discussed this earlier at our executive meeting, and pending our discussion, or as a result of our discussion, we're going to table this and we'll discuss it at our next meeting. And as a tradition that Teresa Todd reminded us of, we like to have these nominees attend the meeting. So we will make provisions for next meeting. I think it's going to be in El Paso for the attendees, the prospective new members to attend. So that's it for tabling number 3.
I move to table.
Yes.
I move to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait for that late one, Sean. Okay, no, and we're all approved. Motion passes the table. Okay. Item 4, general FWTWPG updates. Is that Heather?
That's me.
Heather, take it away.
All right.
We're loading. Here we go.
No, I just got a video.
Oh, it is.
With the Water Development Board, and here's some general updates. Go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to be talking about additional resources and materials available from the board, upcoming tasks, projections data are reviewed by TWTP staff, and a quick update on the regular 88th legislative session, and then overview of infeasible strategies and requirements, and then upcoming contract amendments. Next slide, please. So we have some additional resources available to y'all. We have an accessibility checklist. As a reminder, all government reports need to be screen reader accessible per the American Disabilities Act. So we have a checklist on how our consultants can check off items to make sure that reports and the plan is accessible. We have information on population revision request process and uncertainty in regional water planning, information on the plan amendment process. Also looking ahead, we just kind of finished our projections discussion, and we're going to be identifying major water providers, assess availability and supplies, present the process for identifying potentially feasible strategies for the 2026 plan, and identifying infeasible strategies from the previous 2021 plan. Next slide, please. Some upcoming activities in November. We anticipate going to the board with the projections data, so specifically population projections and demand data for the 2026 plan. And then in January 2024, Region E is planning to determine the process for identifying potential feasible strategies in the 2026 plan and view the results of the infeasible strategy analysis in the 2021 plan. And we have more on that from Juan later this afternoon. And then coming up in February 2024, y'all will be looking to approve the technical memorandum. And then in March, WSP will be submitting that tech memo to the board. Next slide, please. Next slide, thanks. The action slide. So just as a refresher on discussions we've been having over the summer, in your last July meeting, the group authorized WSP to submit on y'all's behalf the required TWDB revision request letter, which included the county's data except for El Paso, Culberson, and Hudspeth counties, that WSP produced the data based on the census undercount for both the population and water demand. And then for El Paso County, Hudspeth County, and Culberson County, WSP submitted 2 data sets, one with the WUG survey data and the other with the census undercount projection. And the TWDB reviewed all of these data sets, and the request was if the TWDB doesn't think that the WUG survey data is appropriate, to accept the population census undercount. And so now I'm going to go over what has been approved by the TWDB and what we plan to take to the board in November. Next slide, please. Thanks. So on the demands, the draft projections are listed here, and then there was the requested changes submitted by WSP. And then that bottom row is what we are recommending that will be taken to the board and recommending for y'all's 2026 plan. And all these units are an acre feet per year. These slides are available online if you want to have the data. We can also email them out too.
Heather, can you talk about the difference between the requested changes and the recommended changes?
I can, but it would make sense in later slides because they're based on the population.
That's fine.
So yes, I will be addressing that. So let's go to the next slide. And just for folks who are more visual, here's the same data in a line graph, and that gold line was the WSP requested changes. The blue line is the draft projections from the 2020 or from before, and the gray broken line is what TWDB is recommending to go to the board. Next slide, please. So for population projections, here are, again, the draft projections from the 2020 census, and then the information that was submitted from WSP, the 2 data sets with the WUG survey data and the census undercount. And then the bottom row is the recommended population. And I'm going to be showing each county, and I can show you the differences between the 2. But to answer your question, Dave, the differences are we did everything on a WUG by WUG level, and for those counties of El Paso, Culberson, and Hudspeth, we looked at each WUG, and I'm gonna deep dive in a minute about it, but we either accepted the WUG data or the 5% undercount survey census data. So that's what that difference is which data set we accepted from the WUG. All right, next slide, please. Have that same information in a line graph. And again, all of these slides are available online on the Region E website. We can also email them out to y'all. All right, so now we're going to look at the breakdown by county. Next slide, please. So for Brewster County, the census 5% undercount data was accepted. So you can see the line is exactly the same. So we just accepted what WSP submitted from the census undercount for Brewster County. Next slide, please. For Culberson County, this was one of the counties where the 2 data sets were submitted, the WUG survey and the census undercount. And almost all of the WUG survey data was accepted for Culberson County. So that gold line is the WUG survey data. The gray broken line is the TWD recommended, and the green line is the 5% undercount. So again, for Culberson County, the WUG survey data was for the most part accepted. Next slide, please. For El Paso County, most of the WUG survey data was accepted with the exception of, I believe, 3 WUGs. For those, we accepted the census undercount. So again, these are all at the WUG level. And then this chart's just showing the summary of at the county level. So that gold line is what the WUG survey data was, and the broken line is what we're recommending. And Juan's handout number 1 has all of the raw data in by WUG. If you'd like to see specifically which WUG had the 5% undercount accepted and which one had the WUG survey data accepted. So, and Juan will be showing that later this afternoon. Okay, next slide, please. Thanks. For Hudspeth County, we accepted the 5% undercount data. And we believe there wasn't enough supporting data to accept the WUG survey. If you have more questions on that, let me know and I can send them to our projections and socioeconomic development team. So next slide, please. Jeff Davis County, the census 5% under data, 5% data was recommended. And next slide, please. Presidio County, also the census undercount data was recommended. And then last, the Terrell County, the census undercount data was recommended. So next steps on this, we will be taking these recommended population projections data. They're currently being reviewed by the Texas Parks and Wildlife State Agency, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCQ, and the Texas Department of Agriculture. And then once we hear feedback from them, we'll consider their feedback, and then we'll be taking these to the board. We anticipate that will be the November board date. Before I move on, do we have any questions on these population data?
If there's any adverse feedback from any of those 3 agencies, will we be presented with that data also?
Yeah, I believe we can share comments.
I think it would be nice if
Yeah.
you would, just so we can see what the comments were and then how you address them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe we do that anyway, but we'll definitely do that.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably do.
Sure. Any other questions or comments before moving on from projections? And again, this is all available online and happy to email you a copy. All right, let's move on to quick review of the 88th regular legislative session. So bills of interest that have passed are Sunset Bill passed, and we're going to go into what that means. So all agencies, state agencies, undergo the sunset process approximately every 12 years. Essentially, this is an external audit done by the legislature of the agency. And the TWDB cannot be eliminated due to the Texas Constitution, but it could be significantly changed. So they can instruct us to remove certain activities or add. But for this cycle, we didn't get too many changes. In terms of planning, each regional water planning group is to include information on the implementation of large projects in its regional plan. So that's something that's new, and large projects are defined as including reservoirs, interstate water transfers, innovative technology projects, desalination plants, and other large projects. And I believe that we had already done these in previous plans. The information must include expenditures of sponsor money, status of a permit applications, and status of phase of construction of a project. And again, these elements are already required in the current planning contract as we are outlined in Exhibit C. And the bill also allows regional water planning groups to plan for a drought worse than the drought of record. But this was already an option for regional water planning groups. Great, next slide, please.
I mean, we wanted to say riverhead has zero flow.
Yeah, it does. Mostly.
So the big bill that y'all are probably interested and heard about is Senate Bill 28, or Senate Joint Resolution 75, or the Texas Water Fund. And this would establish a fund, or the Texas Water Fund, that where money would come from the legislature up to $1 billion, and it would go to funding our current funding programs at the board. It also create a new water supply for Texas fund, also created by this bill. The new water supply for Texas fund can also be used to provide financial assistance, political subdivisions to develop water supply projects to create new water sources such as desalination projects, produced water treatment projects, aquifer storage and recovery projects. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, sorry. How does this differ than SWIFT?
So this is money that could go into SWIFT. So it's pretty much a big pot of money that we're if approved by voters, we get, and then we can fund our other programs. And the only thing that's new is this new water supply fund that's up to 50 million.
This is one of the congressional issues on the next election.
Yeah, so this is
The constitutional change.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I saw it. Yeah.
Yes, and that election is in November.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
This is called new water, right?
The 250 million is for new in water, yeah. So mostly desal projects, ASR.
Now, to be eligible for new money, do you have to be in the state water plan? Like SWIFT requires
I
that.
believe that's a requirement, yeah, but I can check with GR.
I think it would be nice to have some contrasting similarities, and we can talk about that later, but to explain, as the election comes closer, what is the difference between SWIFT and the new water, whatever it is?
I think that I'll double check with government relations, but I believe that new water will be independent of the plan. I think SWIFT is the only fund that's specific to the plan.
Yeah, and I think this was created to address some of the weaknesses of SWIFT.
Right.
Okay. So we'll follow up with that.
Thanks. And if anyone from the board wants to put in the chat information that if I'm speaking, appreciate it. So additionally, a portion of this money would go to support water infrastructure projects for rural political subdivisions and municipalities with populations of less than 150,000. So they are setting aside some money for rural communities. So yeah, if you think this is a good idea, head out to the polls on November 7th and vote. Okay, next slide, please. So our House budget bill, the only thing the legislature actually has to do during the session is pass a budget, and they did. And in terms of regional water planning, we received an extra $1.3 million, and $96,476 of that is going to be going to Region E, and we're gonna deep dive into that in just a few slides. Next slide, please. All right, bills, real quick, bills that did not pass. This was one of our legislative priorities, was trying to have it remove the requirement that a printed copy of the initial prepared plan be in each county courthouse and one public library in each county of the planning area. And it would have also allowed notice of the initial prepared plan hearing to be posted on the planning group's website instead of the newspapers. Unfortunately, this did not pass, so these are still requirements for the cycle. It passed out of the House and actually passed out of the Senate Business Commerce Committee, but did not make it to the Senate floor. So hopefully next session we can do that. And we have comment from Sarah Lee regarding SWIFT. SWIFT is still the only TWD funding program that requires projects in the state water plan. So to answer your question, Scott, that new water fund will be independent of the state water, along with our other funding programs like economically distressed areas program, clean water fund, surface water fund. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so Juan's going to be deep diving into this soon, but I just wanted to remind you all of the general overview of infeasible strategies from the 21 plan and requirements for that. So the analysis has to be completed prior to the tech memo due date, which is March 4th. And you do not need an analysis for alternative strategies, and planning groups will be presenting the results of the analysis at the same public meeting with your feasible strategies. So we're planning on having this in January is the current plan. And then in the tech memo, you all have a list of your infeasible strategies from the 2021 plan. Next slide, please. Yeah, so if you do have infeasible strategies, you will need to amend the 2021 plan to either remove the infeasible strategies or revise them, like changing the online planning decade, or incorporate a new or alternative water management strategy. And these amendments need to be adopted by June of 2020. Next slide, please.
2020.
So on the list of things to do, the first thing is review strategies and projects in the previous 2021 regional water plan and coordinate with the project sponsors to determine implementation status, determine feasibility. And WSP is already working on that. We're going to be talking about that in a couple minutes. Planning groups will be reviewing the strategies and projects that require a permit and involve constructions and that are either shown to be online in 2020 or 2030 or related to major reservoirs, seawater desalination, direct potable reuse, brackish groundwater desalination, aquifer storage and recovery, or out-of-state transfers. Analysis is not required for strategies projects that do not require a permit or involve construction. Next slide, please. So here's a great graphic that my manager made to kind of help visualize if something is feasible or not. So has the sponsor taken any affirmative steps towards implementation consistent with the online decade in the plan? If the answer is yes, then it's feasible. If the answer is no, then that strategy needs to either be amended for the online decade or it needs to be removed from the plan and then have a replacement of the plan. Next slide, please. So what determines feasibility? The project is considered feasible if there has been money spent on that strategy or project. If they voted to approve spending money on a strategy or project, and if they've applied for federal or state permit for the strategy or project. Next slide, please. So if you have infeasible strategies, what do you do? As we mentioned before, you can remove them from the plan. You can revise them to kick the online decade down the road, or you can incorporate a new or alternative strategy in the plan. However, obviously, alternative strategy needs to be considered feasible if you're going to be adding it to the plan. Any questions on infeasible strategies? We're moving on to contract amendments. And again, we're going to deep dive into this with Juan in just a few minutes. All right, let's keep going. So upcoming contract amendments. As I mentioned before, the budget was passed and $1.3 million was allocated to regional water planning groups. And the Region E will be getting $96,476 of that. And y'all will need to take action to allow the Rio Grande Council of Governments to amend their contract with the board so that they can accept these funds. I believe that we're doing that today. Right?
Yeah, that's item 10.
Yeah, and that's it for me. Any questions?
Very good.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
I like the little flower next to her name.
So you remember
I just noticed. Everybody noticed that?
digital.
John, you saw that, right? Okay, we're ready for item 5. WSP update on regional water planning schedule. Juan, take it away.
Really quick, do you want me to share the screen, Peggy, or do you want to? Okay, I see you.
Oh, yeah, I can do it if you like. Okay.
Perfect. Yes. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Heather, also for that presentation on the Water Development Board side. To begin, we'll be talking about the update on the regional water planning schedule. So next slide, please, Peggy. Again. So To reiterate what Heather was saying, all of the 2023 can you go back one slide, please?
Sure, sorry.
No worries. Thanks. To reiterate what Heather was saying, that all the 2023 deadlines have been met. That is the revision request letter that we provided to the Water Development Board on the population and the water demand data, as well as the previous 2023 deadline, which was the non-municipal data. Those have all been met, so now we're looking forward into 2024. What are the new deadlines that the Regional Water Planning Group has to meet? First and foremost is the technical memorandum that is due by the Water Development Board. As Heather was mentioning, this tech memo will include the revision of the infeasible water management strategies from the 2021 plan and our new 2026 feasible water management strategies for this new cycle that we're working on currently. And additionally, tagging on to what Heather was saying, by June 5th of next year, all of the infeasible water management strategies that we have identified within that tech memo have to be amended in the 2021 regional water plan. So those are the two main deadlines that we have to hit within the next couple of months. So we'll be working diligently to get these things going. Next slide, Peggy. So this is a quick visual representation of where we are in the regional water planning calendar. We are in that red circle. Where you can see we are hitting heavy tasks 3 and 4. These are the tasks that we have to accomplish in order to meet that March 4th deadline of the technical memorandum. And you could see as well that those previous 2023 deadlines, which are the red squares, are the deadlines that we have to keep in mind. So the 2023 deadlines have already been met. We're looking forward to those 2024 deadlines, the technical memorandum and the amendments to the 2021 regional water plan. Next slide. So what did we cover at the previous meeting? As Heather was mentioning, we had approved the population and municipal water demand projections. That was the August 11th submittal deadline. WSP was able to submit these revision request letter ahead of time, and we actually just received feedback from the Water Development Board, as Heather was showing, as to what was approved. So next slide, Peggy. And at this point, I'd also like to invite the group to view handout number 1. Handout number 1 is the values that were approved for each population, for the population throughout the planning decade for each entity. So as you can see, there's this chart has been color coded 3 different ways. The red box that we see here first, those are values that were provided to us by the Water Development Board. These are values that they did not accept either the undercount analysis or the survey results. Instead, they used the annual water user survey population growth estimates, which actually provided a little bit more conservative population numbers than what we had suggested. So this is data that's recommended to us by the board to for this population numbers for each of these entities with the red square, which is El Paso WCID 4, Haciendas del Norte, and Federal Correctional Institution La Tuna. In the yellow highlighted boxes, you can see where the Water Development Board had approved the undercount methodology that we had requested. As previously, in the previous meeting, we had discussed this undercount methodology included a 5% undercount of Hispanic population throughout the region and a 3.3% undercount of Black population throughout the region. And we amended, or we decided to change the original population numbers that were provided to us by the board in order to include this undercount, and this methodology was accepted. So these are the numbers that you see in the yellow boxes. And then further along, the numbers that you see in the highlighted red boxes, for example, Van Horn or El Paso Water, these are population values that were accepted through the water surveys that we were doing with each entity. So actually, El Paso Water, they came back to us with saying they weren't happy with the undercount analysis or the Water Development Board's numbers. They provided their own set of population estimates, and with the supporting documentation, it was accepted by the board. Same with Van Horn and the Blue Origin Space Facility. Those additional population numbers were incorporated into this plan. So what we can see here within this mod with what we're presenting is population values to be included in the 2026 regional water planning cycle. But what I find great is that this shows all three interested parties how we each come up with our own recommendations, and it all comes together into the plan. So the process works, and this is a one way to demonstrate it. But I believe that's it. If there's any questions on this particular item, we can move back to the presentation. But if there's any questions on population projections or what was accepted, please feel free to chime in.
These slides are available online for download if you'd like.
That is correct. Yes, thanks. Next slide, please. So I believe at this point, the agenda item does end. I think the major water providers discussion is the next agenda item, Scott, if I'm not mistaken.
Item 6 is discuss and review major water providers.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So yes, so now moving on to item 6 in the agenda, what we will discuss today as well. As Scott said, item 6 will be major water providers. Then we will turn it over to Friesen Nichols. They will do their portion on surface water supply analysis process and the submittal of the hydrologic variance request. I think these are further items in the agenda as well. Once Friesen Nichols has been done with their presentation, we will kick it back to WSP and we will discuss the process for identifying the potentially infeasible water management strategies in the 2021 plan, as Heather was discussing. And we will also talk about how we're going to start the new process for identifying feasible water management strategies for the 2026 plan, so the current cycle. Please, next slide, Peggy. So to initiate the discussion, major water providers, what is a major water provider? The Water Development Board defines a major water provider as a water user group or a wholesale water provider of particular significance to the region's water supply as determined by the regional water planning group. And this last sentence that you see in yellow is key. The determination of the regional water planning group provides flexibility for Region E to have their own definition for what a major water provider is. So according to the board, a major water provider is a wholesale provider that has contracts to sell more than 1,000 acre-feet of water per year. However, this is just the Water Development Board's definition. So Peggy, if you move on to the next slide, we can see what the approved definition of a major water provider is for Region E, as in defined in the 2021 Regional Water Plan. So what we had approved as a major water provider is an entity that provides significant water supplies of more than 5,000 acre-feet of water per year. So there's the main difference in the definition. Region E has a major water provider as an entity that sells 5,000 acre-feet of water or more per year, and the Water Development Board is a little bit lower at 1,000 acre-feet. So from this point forward, we're going to be making sure to use Region E's definition of a major water provider, and that is an entity that sells 5,000 acre-feet of water or more per year. So which are these entities? Peggy, if you move on to the next slide. These entities, it's the same entities as in the 2021 Regional Water Plan. There's only 4 WUGs in Region E that are considered major water providers according to our definition. That is El Paso County Water Improvement District 1, El Paso Water, Lower Valley Water District, and Horizon Regional Municipal Independent District. So these are, once again, these are what Region E has described to be a major water provider. These are entities that have more than 5,000 acre-feet of water sales per year. So if there's any entity out there that is potentially looking to have an increase in their sales and they're going to sell any more than 5,000 acre-feet of water per year that is not already on this list, please let us know and we'll make sure to add them to the list of major water providers for the region. But at this point, if there's any questions, yeah, feel free to go ahead.
Yes. Where does Fort Bliss fall under that list?
I believe Fort Bliss is not considered a water provider because they are purchasing water from El Paso instead of being their own like wholesale provider. That's one of the definitions I do have to. I was having trouble with Jennifer understanding, but she was adamant that it's about water sales. So it's from what I understand, what Jennifer explained, El Paso Water sells to Fort Bliss, and then they provide it to their customers, but it's not like they have their own conveyance system and they're profiting off of these water supplies or sales.
I just seems, I wasn't expecting to see Fort Bliss not on that list. We sell them water wholesale and they provide it, they make it into retail water for their customers in addition to their own wells. We provide them 25% of their water, but to say that they're not a major water provider of that definition over 1,000 acre feet, I sure think that they are.
Remember, this is
5,000, yeah, 5,000 acre feet for Region
Do
E.
you have, just to note from y'all, the TWD rules no longer have a volumetric threshold for water providers. Definition for wholesale water providers. Any entity, person or entity, including river authorities and irrigation districts, that delivers or sells water wholesale, treated or raw, to WUGs or other wholesale water providers, or that the Regional Water Planning Group expects or recommends to deliver or sell water wholesale to WUGs or other wholesale water providers during the period covered by the plan. The Regional Water Planning Groups shall identify the wholesale water providers within each region to be valued. So it's no longer has a volumetric threshold. So if you want to include Fort Bliss.
Well, maybe Fort Bliss has fallen off that list because of that volumetric 1,000 versus 5,000 number. It could be less than the 5,000 threshold, but that just seems inconsistent because Lower Valley is a wholesale customer of El Paso Water. And my comment is, why are they on the list and Fort Bliss is not?
Sarah Lee has her hand up.
Do you have a
Sarah?
classification for minor water providers? I mean, where does all the rest of it?
Yeah, I mean, things like,
Like Alpine.
We have
yeah.
that stand up, Peggy.
Yeah, Sarah. It's Sarah Lee has her hand up.
Hey, everyone, just wanted to jump in and hopefully help clarify.
Sarah's- 1 second, y'all, Sarah's, can you clarify something?
Okay.
So back a couple of slides, one had a definition for a wholesale water provider, which had a volumetric threshold of 1,000 acre feet per year. So that's what I was trying to clarify in the chat, is that for the region to be planning for their wholesale water providers, there's no longer that threshold. But a major water provider is different. So the threshold for major water providers is also up to the planning group to set. So I don't know who determined the 5,000 acre feet per year threshold, but that's up for y'all to decide. That's not coming from the board. So I just want to clarify that for y'all.
Thanks, Sarah. So yeah, that was determined before, but you don't have to follow that question.
I guess my general comment is that Fort Bliss seems like a large group of people, large water user, relatively speaking, and to think that they're not a major water provider when they're using wholesale water of ours to provide to their retail customers. So.
Yes, Scott, and that's, I had also, I brought this up with Jennifer in our discussions, and that's something that, I could touch base with her after this meeting is why wasn't Fort Bliss also included? Because this list, from what I understood, Jennifer explained to me, is the same list from the previous plan, from the 2021 Regional Water Plan. So maybe there was some historical context as to why Fort Bliss wasn't included in the 2021 Regional Water Plan as a major water provider back then, that maybe I'm not aware of, that maybe Jennifer might have some historical knowledge on, and as to why, she was adamant that this list shouldn't change according to the definition. But like you said, Scott, we'll be happy to incorporate Fort Bliss if necessary, and if they do fall under this definition of major water provider, then we'll go ahead and add them to the list.
Well, I would just add another comment on Fort Bliss. If it by these definitions doesn't work as a major water provider than an explanation and a table beneath it. Fort Bliss is not in this group because of such and such. And
Okay.
maybe it's, Jeff was suggesting maybe it's a minor. Is there another definition of water provider, like the smaller communities like Alpine? What are their thresholds and where are they included?
I
Maybe
don't,
it's
I'm
a
not,
matter that they're not major, but they're minor. Maybe that's all of
Mhm.
this is.
From what I'm aware, this major water provider step, I think it's for us to it's for the region to kind of identify what their major water providers is, and we do have we will have an agenda item in the next meeting in order to approve of the major water providers list. So there's the process is just to identify what are the major water providers for the region as a whole. So you know, this is just kind of our introductory of what we have considered to be major water providers in the region. But come January, we'll have the finalized list and we'll have it ready for the group to approve, and you know, a solid definition as to what we have all decided to be the major water provider.
Correct. Juan, Michael Flores, Lower Valley Water District. We're on the list, and several other people. We don't. So the definition of water provider, and that's where it gets. Scott mentioned it. It says, what is the definition of a true major water provider? You know,
So let's
is
go
it a
back one slide,
number
Peggy.
of connections, or is it based on, do we have water wells that we provide our services to it? Since we are a major wholesaler from El Paso Water, is that something that is on their definition as well? So, and that's the clarification that we need to get.
Yes. No, thanks, Michael. Peggy, could you go to slide? I believe it's slide 10. We have. I remember. So here, this yeah, this is the definition that is in the regional water plan for what Region E considered to be a major water provider previously. So 5 years ago, whenever we were having this discussion as to what will Region E define as a major water provider, what Jennifer told me was approved was this definition, which is an entity that currently provides significant water supplies, which is more than 5,000 acre-feet of water per year, to other users, and which will continue to develop new supplies to meet the future needs of those whom they supply. So this was what was written and accepted in the 2021 Regional Water Plan as the definition of a major water provider for the Far West Texas Water Planning Group.
And that definition is up to the group.
Yes.
It's what's significant to the region. So there isn't.
I would just, we're having reading this definition, if we had what it is that Fort Bliss is providing in terms of acre feet, I think it'd be clear to say it's major or it's not. So I think it all, and we're not seeing that number, what they provide. So that's why I look at it and say, they seem major to me, but if the numbers themselves say that they're not, then that's a table with their numbers. And then conversely, Lower Valley, because they're major, they're going to be over 5,000. I think it ought to be that simple if you had the number next to it. So
right, and from what I understand that Jennifer said, these are contract sales. So you have contracts in place that prove that you're selling this much water per year. So you know.
No, and they're providing, that's not the category, it's how much water they provide to customers. Okay.
Even though
we provide more wholesale water to Lower Valley than Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss offsets it with a large well production.
Understand. No, understand. Only East Bliss, I think, is what you guys provide.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it all falls beneath the 5,000. That's why they're minor.
And you know, Scott, the 5,000 more than 5,000 acre feet per year, you know, I'm not the math person, but you know, what's the translation of 5,000 acre feet per year when you compare it to people usage? Are we talking? And that's where the gray spot for me is is it based on population of or how much it's actually we buy or how much we sell of water? That's my question.
I'm just I'm sensing just some overall confusion with this, and I think if we just had the volumes next to these in a table, we can describe this and understand it better. And but right now, it's kind of like we're saying El Paso's major, the irrigation district's major, but Fort Bliss is not. But it seems like they should be. If you had the acre feet next to it, I think it would make it very clear. So I think that would help everybody's understanding, and myself included.
Fair enough.
I think it's good discussion.
We'll make sure to have those volumes included for the January meeting when we'll approve of the list of major water providers. But yeah, so we're just kind of introducing reintroducing the idea to the group as to what we had defined, what the region had defined previously as to what a major water provider is, and if the list needs changing, then we'll go ahead and get those changes done.
I have another comment. This is for TWDB and for WSP. Why do we need to have this discussion of major? And it's a small subset of all the providers. How is their plan improved with this definition?
I'll defer to someone from the Water Development Board.
Hi, this is Sarah again, if I can help answer that question. So Scott, the regional water plans are water user group-based plans. So even though the data for your wholesale water providers are going into the database, the data for wholesale water providers is not necessarily reported in the plans unless they're also considered a water user group. So this is a way for regions to still show data for wholesalers that they also think are significant and want to show in their plan. So if you designate a wholesale water provider as a major water provider, then you're still going to be reporting information for that entity in the plan. So that's the difference there. And the significance of that is so that it's allowing the groups to report what's significant to them. Whereas I believe previously, before this new kind of concept came about last cycle, was that every single wholesaler water provider was required to be reported. But some regions gave us feedback that they weren't all significant. So there's a lot of additional work to be reporting this information for entities that were not necessarily significant for the region. So it's providing a lot more regional flexibility in what you're reporting on.
Okay. Juan, can you help us maybe in a future meeting kind of understand these concepts better? I think we need to move on through but I just have some overall, why is this definition needed? And why are certain entities on there?
So it was
that kind of thing. If we can just clarify that, but I do think we have more things to go through, and we have time to clarify this at their next meeting.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, yeah, next meeting we'll have, like I said, we'll have the same list, potentially with future additions if needed. We'll make sure to include the volumes and make it a little bit clearer for the group to understand what a major water provider is.
Thank you, Juan.
Yes, sir. Of course.
Is that it for item 6?
Yes, I believe at this point we will turn it over to
John Albright and Friesen Nichols. Item number 7.
Yeah, how y'all, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Okay, go on to the next slide. But I'm going to talk a little bit about, how we're going to do the analysis to come up with the surface water supplies that we're going to compare to the population and water demand, or we're going to compare to the water demand projections in order to evaluate what our needs are. Okay, and I'm just going to go through, kind of give you a little bit of background on that. And then there's I have a little action that hopefully we can take care of, a little bit of paperwork that is a requirement of the Water Development Board at the end of this that we want to see if we can take care of today. So, all right, I'm going to give you a little bit of history here about what we're talking about when we talk about what water availability models. Back in 1996, the state of Texas had a pretty bad drought throughout the state. It wasn't as bad as some of the more what we've experienced recently, but it got people's attention, got the legislature's attention, and as part of that process, they passed a legislation called Senate Bill 1, and Senate Bill 1 was what created the regional water planning process. But Senate Bill 1 also directed the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Actually, it was the Texas Natural Resources Conservation Commission back in those days. Directed them to come up with new and updated water availability models for all the basins in the state. And that's those water availability models, also known as WAMs. The original legislation actually did not include the Rio Grande, but the Rio Grande was added later. So now we have water availability models for the whole state, and they've been around since the late 1990s, early 2000s. I was fortunate enough to be on the consulting teams that developed water availability models for the Neches, the Trinity, San Jacinto, and Brazos. And I've also worked on recently on updating the RED, the Brazos, the Neches, and and I did an independent peer review on the Rio Grande. So I'm very familiar with these models. Anyways, the TCEQ designed these for their permit application process, and a lot of the things that are done in there are geared towards new water rights. But part of the overall vision of the legislation that created this was that these water availability models would be used to define the water supplies in the regional water planning process, and thereby facilitate, new projects that are identified in the regional water planning process. Well, they would have already been evaluated with the same tool that the commission is using for their water rights. Okay, so that's why we have this interaction and why we were required to use these models. Is they were born together and are designed to work together. All right. One else I want to mention, there are 23 river basins in the state of Texas, but there are only 20 water availability models. And that's because some of the little coastal basins down there are joined together with some other basins. All right. Next slide, please. So what is a WAM? If you look on the TCEQ's website, they have this definition that talks about, it's a computer model that has some assumptions, but it doesn't really tell you what those assumptions are. But really what the WAMs are all about is they're all about water rights. And the state of Texas has what's known as a prior appropriation system for water rights, where every water right is given a priority date that corresponds for older water rights. It's when the water was first used for a beneficial purpose. For later water rights, it's the date that the application was considered complete at the commission. And since they're all about water rights, there's a thing called the Four Corners Doctrine. And what that means is that what's in the water availability model is what's in the paper water right, and not much of anything else. There are some other external agreements that are occasionally put in the water availability models, but really the water availability models, what they do is they reflect the water rights permits and just what the water right permits say. So one of those, one of the implications of that is that there's thousands of water rights in the state of Texas, and most of those water rights are not used or are not fully used. But the water availability models assume that every water right, everybody who has a permanent water right in the state of Texas, that those are all being exercised at their full authorizations. So so it's very conservative, but it's what they need, what the commission needs to do to consider new water rights when they're analyzing new water rights. All right. Next slide, please. Y'all have any questions about that? All right.
John?
Yeah.
I've always been concerned or confused, I guess, is why we have to do the WAM on the Rio Grande, which is a federal administrative body of water. It's a Bureau of Reclamation project, as opposed to the rest of Texas where it's TCEQ water rights.
Right. Well, there are water rights in Region E that are not dependent on the Rio Grande project. So we definitely need to use it to evaluate those. And the Rio Grande project supplies from the Rio Grande project are actually in the water availability models as well. And we kind of I'll get to that in a minute. That's a really good question, but to kind of hold that thought there, and we'll get there. All right. All right. WAMs and regional water planning. There's a thing that you may have heard bandied about. There's a full authorization or run 3. In the original water availability models, there were actually 10 different water availability scenarios. The commission has only kept 2 of those, one of which is the one they use to evaluate new perpetual water rights, which is run 3. And as I've mentioned, it includes the full authorization of all water rights. And it all does not include, these water availability models do not include return flows. And I know that return flows are very important in Region E, and we do those outside of the water availability model. So it's not that we're not considering them, but the water availability models define how we are allocating our available surface water to those water rights. Okay, this bullet down here, this is the thing that we need to do today, is that any deviations from Run 3 require approval by both the Regional Water Planning Group, and once the Regional Water Planning Group has approved those deviations, it will be submitted to the Water Development Board for them to approve. And Region E doesn't have many changes to the water availability models, but I'll go over those here in just a second. So anyway, and as I said, these water availability models are how we determine the available surface water supplies, which we are going to compare to the demand projections to come up with our needs. All right. Next slide, please. This is just a little map here, and it shows where all the TCQ water rights are located in Region E, and parts of Region F are on there too. Region E has got kind of hard to see the little red boundary on there.
Yeah.
Anyway, there are, there's quite a few surface water rights in Region E. So, all right, next slide, please. All right, this is where we're getting into get into your question here, Scott. So, the water availability in the upper Rio Grande and the El Paso area and around there is fully regulated by the Rio Grande project, and how much water is comes in from out of state, and into Region E out of that project, and then how it's all divided up between New Mexico, Mexico, and Texas. So what the water availability models have in them is from they start in 1940 and go through 2000, and it has in those the historical water that's been made available to Texas from the Rio Grande project, and that's been adjusted for the under delivery from New Mexico for those. The Rio Grande WAM was recently been updated. It used to end in the hydrology used to end in 2000. It's been updated through 2018, and so the 2000 to 2018 it just has the historical deliveries from the Rio Grande project, and that's what we use for our definition of. We take those deliveries and split them up amongst the entities that rely on the Rio Grande project. Okay, does that make sense? That's how we've done it in the past. So again, I talked about return flows. We will develop those outside of the WAM. There is a strong groundwater surface water interaction that's taken care of. Some of it's in that delivery, and other is in losses that are included in the model for other surface water supplies. As it flows downstream, water is lost, and that's taken care of in the model itself. I did mention that all water rights operate at their fully authorized diversions, but that's kind of not really the case for the water rights that are associated with the Rio Grande project, because it's based upon whatever was available from there. And I just say that, you know, the water supplies that are not backed up by the Rio Grande project are you know, they're not very, for the most part, they're not very reliable. So anyway, and it just you know, the interaction with the upstream states in Mexico makes the water availability evaluation here a little bit complicated, along with the fact that it's highly variable from year to year how much water you get out of the project. So, all right, any questions about this? Did I answer your question, Scott?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
All right. All right, next slide, please. All right, so here we're coming to what we need to approve today. This is the hydrologic variance request. And we've had to do this for the last few planning cycles. And it's just that the Water Development Board wants the regions to be aware of how we've changed the water availability models. And they want to make sure that we're doing things according to their rules and so forth. And so that's what we'd but it also, the variance request does allow the use of alternatives to the WAMs if we want. But in the past, we've relied on, like I say, we're using the water availability model mostly for those run-of-the-river rights that are not dependent on the Rio Grande project. Those are the most important things that this is used for. All right. So anyway, and you know, we got to do it for each river basin. Well, we just got one river basin in Region E, that's the Rio Grande, and then we have to approve this at a regular meeting, which is hopefully what we'll do today. All right, next slide, please.
We can do it without leaving the report.
Well, the changes that we've made from the last round of regional water planning, we're not changing much of anything. We're not doing anything new for this round of planning as far as the hydrologic variance request goes. But the main thing that we've got is we've got a new Rio Grande WAM. The hydrology has been extended to include recent years. So we're going to have a new set of water availability numbers for everybody. They've extended the hydrology and also made several improvements to the model. So we'll be expecting maybe a little bit different results than what we had before, just because we've got a new model. The other thing that we had to do in the older WAM, the original WAM had several older water rights in there that were abandoned as part of an adjudication process that happened. I was trying to look up when it happened. It happened in maybe the early 2000s or something like that. And those were included in the original WAM, but those water rights no longer existed. So no longer existed. So we had to have a variance request to have them taken out of the WAM. Well, they've been taken out of the WAM now, so we don't have to ask for that anymore. So there's no other new requests. Those are the new things. All right. Next slide, please. And this is the next. Okay, so these are our variances, which are compared to the other regions that we work in. These are pretty minimal. So in the past, what we've historically done is we've used the minimum. We've defined the supply from the Rio Grande project as the minimum amount, that minimum annual historical allotment from the Rio Grande project for those entities that rely on the Rio Grande project. We don't explicitly model the Rio Grande project in the WAM or anything like that, so we just rely on what happened historically. All right, and that's how we've done it in the past. And you know, that's the other change, and this one dates back, I think, to when we first used the WAMs out here, is that the irrigation rights had some small diversions outside of the irrigation season, and the regional water planning group that requested that we just have those irrigation rights so that they only divert water March through October, the irrigation season. So that's you know, a pretty minor change, but it applies to a lot of water rights because there's a lot of irrigation water rights. And that, I think, those are our there's one more slide, sorry. Yeah, one more slide that we've included in our variance request. In the Balmorhea, this has to do with Region F, but very minimal impacts on Region E. In the Balmorhea area, there's some springs that are actually located in Region E, but the water is actually used in Region F. And what we've done is we've disconnected those water rights that get water from those springs. We've disconnected it from the rest of the basin, because the way the model was working is that it was passing water from those springs to other downstream water rights, and that's just not how it works. The water wouldn't get there even if they tried, you know. So all that water is used for those water rights, and so we've just disconnected that. It does have a very small impact on a couple of water rights in Reeves County, but again, those water rights would never receive the benefit of water from those springs, because it just wouldn't get to them. It'd be lost before it got there. So that's I think that is my last variance request. You want to go to the next slide?
Question?
Yeah. Any questions? Any comments? There's a Word document. If you want to click on that Word document there, you can see the actual checklist. That is the Water Development Board. If it works for you, I don't know if it's going to work for you or not. Go
wasn't it, right?
back.
Is that
it? Yeah. That's it. Can you click on that Word document and see if it opens?
What is the proposed variance?
There's no, it doesn't change.
Does it change?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, sorry about that.
Do we have it somewhere else? Were we given that at all?
I can share my screen and you can see it.
Okay. There are a couple of questions in the room, but Teresa
Sure.
too, yeah?
Go for it. Yeah.
I'm the liaison to Region F. And so just with regard to the strategy involving Balmorhea, have they been briefed on that and they're on board with that?
Yes. We are the lead consultant in Region F, and we're doing the water availability analysis, and it's part of their hydrologic variance.
Okay, just wanted to check. Thanks so much.
Any other questions?
I don't remember. Did we talk about this last meeting?
No.
This seems like a fairly important piece of information. Maybe I'm overblowing it, but I mean, I'd like to read the report and see more details about the WAM to understand. One, I don't even know if the geographic, if it includes from Fort Quitman down to the end of our eastern boundary or not. I just don't know enough about this, and
yeah, well,
it would be very helpful if these big, it seems to me this is a big deal, was brought up at one meeting and we had the space in between to consider the information. Just asking me to vote yes on this now is a little tough.
Well, I think
I would defer to you because it looks like this just covers Fort Quitman above, but I don't know.
John, what are the variances that you're asking for us to approve?
If well, let me answer your question about the WAMs. The Rio Grande WAM includes every water right from El Paso to the mouth at the Gulf of Mexico. It has the entire basin modeled in it. It also has water coming in from Mexico as well. So it's the whole basin that we're doing here. So, but we're just focused on our little part up here in Region E. All right, so let's go to what the variances are. And I apologize. This variance did not make it into our package. Back.
Yeah.
I mean,
For
Yeah, I
context,
agree. We need more time.
Okay.
for context in statute, y'all have to use the WAMs unless you apply for a variance request.
Right.
So that's where this is coming from.
Yeah,
Well,
go
variance
back
request.
another slide and we can see what the variances are.
Somebody's asking us to approve a variance request. What variance is being requested?
Is that what's in the Word doc, John?
Well, I have the requests here on, go to the next slide.
Yeah, y'all haven't worked that much with us, but
Next slide.
we know what we're doing and understand.
These are the two variances we're asking for.
Here's the request. Okay.
And this is what was used in the last plan, John?
That's correct. This is not different from
So it's not new information,
in
just
any planning cycle.
This is all federal signal.
Doesn't mean it was right the last time.
well,
that's true.
I think that our group would like to see something, an opportunity to review something, and then this request.
Right. Y'all will need to complete this before the tech memo is submitted, so
So I think that's
March.
the tech memo is due in March, so.
y'all will be reviewing it in February.
So I think if the group had something to review and sink their teeth into, they could feel more confident about something, approving something. But it's a lot of effort, but we don't understand everything. So I think an opportunity to review what's on paper is what the group wants. And then we have to, as a group, we have to commit to giving direction to John at our next meeting to move forward with his request, because I think he needs to, or he'll be slowed up on his schedule. So that's what I'd recommend. The group needs to be provided with information that they can review and approve, and then at next meeting, we have to put on a meeting to approve this request. But
I so move.
okay,
Second.
Got a motion in a second.
do I have any further discussion?
Now, let me ask a question. Is there any impact of the Rio Grande settlement on this at all?
I don't think he has knowledge of that to include it as modeling.
Okay, I'm just,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
why I
good
asked.
question.
There's apparently a year pending final.
It's a very good question, but at least from we're a significant Rio Grande user, and for our water supply for El Paso water, we're using the drought of record, which means 10,000 acre feet for El Paso to use in a given season. That's severe drought. It's the worst water supply year ever. It was in 2013. So I feel like that Jay's nodding his head. I feel like from the river availability and what we put into our water supply planning for El Paso, that this is accurate enough. Now, what happens below Fort Quitman and the impacts to the users down there, I think that's what people would like to have a little more opportunity to review. And that's what we would like. So an opportunity to see this.
That's where you are.
Just as a heads up, if you do this, it's likely the timing's not gonna work out. So y'all need to approve the hydrologic variance and then submit that to us for review, the TWDB, and then TWDB approves it. And then Reese Nichols can complete the supply analysis, which is all going into the text.
So what, I might understand that we're being set up to where if we don't approve this, it's all gonna fall apart today.
Well, the variance is for below equipment now?
This is.
There is no variance, but I still want to understand what I'm being asked to do, and that's not happening today.
You're being asked to, instead of using the default TCQ WAMs, to use the Rio Grande project supplies instead. Is that correct, John?
No, it's the.
Yes, well, there are only two, there's, this is just a clarification about how we're going to do the supplies from the Rio Grande project. Because those are not explicitly modeled in the WAMs, they're just in there as a historical inflow into the model. So that's how we have historically defined it,
John,
And
I thought you said the Rio Grande project was independent of the WAM.
The Rio Grande project is independent of the WAM, but the WAM has the WAM uses the historical.
If it's independent, it's listed in lieu of. That's what I don't understand. If the two things are independent of each other, why is one in lieu of the other one?
Well, it's
why are we doing a variance?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I stopped. Go ahead.
Okay. This is just a clarification to the Water Development Board that we're going to be using this. That this is how we're proposing to define the supplies from the Rio Grande project. Okay.
Okay, and you're changing that because the Rio Grande project above Fort Whitman is federal project and not state.
Yes, it's also not. It's also only included in the water availability model to the extent that that it's been supplied water to Texas historically, with some adjustments.
So
it's not explicitly modeled.
What more information, like Jeff is asking for, what more information is available? What else can you give to us that you haven't already given to us?
This is Jay. Can I chime in real quick? I have a quick question with the irrigation district, John.
Yeah.
So you're requesting to base the analysis on deliveries with on the lowest year of deliveries. Where's what is the measurement today, or what are you considering today for the allotment? I guess is it an average of the last 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years, or what are you all recording today that you're requesting to base it on the lowest annual historical allotment of deliveries?
I believe it's just based upon whatever has been delivered to Texas from the Rio Grande project historically.
Okay, so it's in a range right now, on the historical range.
It's every year, or really every month that's in the model. The model uses data from 1940 through 2018. So it has in there what's been delivered. Like I say, the deliveries before 2000 have been adjusted to account for under delivery from New Mexico.
Okay.
But since 2000, which is my understanding is still the lowest year, is past that. It's just whatever was used historically. And this is how we've defined the supply from the Rio Grande project in the last several rounds of regional planning.
John, is there some kind of formal report out there that we can get visible to us?
Well, there's a report on the Rio Grande water availability model. It's very technical, but
we're a technical group.
Well, can we have that made available to this group soon?
Sure. I mean, you can get it from the I can. It's available online. It's available from the.
Is there a report on your that you wrote up the logic on these variances? A more recent report than the WAM?
Well, again, these two variances here.
They're all, I understand.
Yeah, have been. This is what we've done for many rounds of planning, so they're not any different.
Teresa, what do you got?
What I was talking about and looking for is we're talking about like something new from Fort Quitman toward Big Bend. And so that's what I was talking about. And is there information on that? Because it seems like that is something different and that is something new. That's what I heard from what you were talking about. Is that correct?
Yes, what we have almost 20 more years of hydrologic data that's going to and you know I don't know how it's changed out here, if at all, but it may change some of those supplies that are not dependent on the Rio Grande project, just because we have more years of hydrologic data, and those years are very, very dry years.
I understand.
But I don't know that until we run the model and pull the information.
Kind of report, we need to move on.
We don't have that information. Yeah.
You will have that information when we've finished our water availability analysis.
Okay.
So John, we have a question here in the room on how this applies to planning. So the default is that you use the TCQ WAMs, which don't consider all of this, the federal management.
To come up with our supply numbers.
Right. So they would have to in statute use the TCQ WAMs, which y'all have deemed inappropriate because, you know, the Rio Grande is, as you're saying, Scott, managed by the Bureau of Reclamation. So if you don't approve this, then John Albright's only option is to use the TCQ WAMs.
No, it is not governed by the Bureau of Reclamation below Fort Quitman.
That's correct.
So my only objection here, and I guess that somewhat frustrated, is that it seems to me that we should at a meeting say, hey, next time you're going to need to be talking about this stuff. And here's the what you need to look up.
I'm not discounting that, so
I understand. And
we need.
There's a motion in a second.
We need to see something in writing that we're being asked to consider as a motion to approve, and we don't feel like we have enough with this briefing. So we need something that we can look at and approve at our next meeting.
How bad does it fall apart if we don't approve today?
You may miss your tech memo deadline because they need, and unfortunately for y'all, we were really bogged down in the population discussion in the last several meetings. So that's why we haven't been able to talk about this yet. But if you don't approve it, then, you know, John can't do his work to submit to us to review to do your supply analysis.
Okay, when is the absolute latest that we could have a chance to look at this and then approve it and still make suspenses?
I mean, I would say we need to have another meeting before January.
Well, that's pretty easy to do.
Aren't we having another meeting for January anyway?
Well,
that wasn't originally the plan, but you know, that's what's needed. John?
This is just September, so we've got 3 months.
Let me just make a comment here. If we use the TCQ WAM straight off the shelf without any changes in it, the only change is this last bullet here, and it's a really minor change. So we don't even have to ask for any hydrologic variance. You know, I don't think it's necessarily slows us down, you know, and I apologize for not having the variance letter. I did not notice that it was not in your package. And I apologize for that because we've had this letter ready for, you know, a while, but I apologize it didn't get to you. That's my fault. I didn't.
As a point of discussion on the motion that's on the floor, I think maybe we should back up, go ahead and approve this and just make the point that we need these things like sort of like a new business, old business approach, Robert's Rules of Order approach to these big ideas that we talk, you know, next meeting, you need to think about this. Because I would like, if I'd known, I could have looked up.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that, and I think it's actually a good idea that we approve the business at hand that we need to approve to not slow down the plan. But I can tell from the heads nodding here and virtually that we would like to learn more about this whole process that John's doing. And it's a lot that we're being asked to kind of learn. So I think through this process of another presentation, we can learn more about what's happening, but we need to approve him today to do what he needs to do.
John, I have one other question. On the last bullet, you said that that's the only place a change occurs. When are diversions allowed now other than March and October?
They had the way that it's in the model, it has small diversions throughout the year. If outside of that.
Really?
Yes, it does.
What do we have the small diversions about throughout the year for?
I don't know. I'm not sure that's just the way it is in the model. So.
Irrigation district, any comments on that? Or do you have diversions other than March through October?
When we have natural occurring events such as arroyos running, obviously those are brought into the system because they end up in New Mexico and the water travels down. If it's a significant event, that would be one example. Two would be effluent that comes out of the treatment plants daily. Those would be the only two that I can think of occurring outside of the allocated season, which obviously normally would be March through October.
Those are dependent on the weather, though.
The effluent.
Not effluent.
Effluent comes out of the El Paso Water Treatment Plant. So that, and then obviously the significant events that trigger
that means if we approve this, that those diversions can't occur except March to October. That's what it says.
Well, this is allotment. So allotment can only occur between March and October. So those are allotments from the Bureau to the districts.
We don't make rules. That's just the plan. That's just how they calculate the numbers.
And the lowest annual historical allotment would be 2013.
It's irrigation.
That's the lowest on record. 6-inch allocation.
Right, I understand. And I don't see any change from the way it is now. That's why I'm asking the question. It seems like that's not modified diversions to occur only March to October. That's the way it is now. For irrigation.
Yes.
So that's not a change to me. Well, I don't understand.
You see, that was the question I was asking earlier. I mean, I guess the only change, you're changing it to the lowest ever recorded on record, I'm assuming. So I was asking if there was a range or you're requesting to change it to the lowest, right?
Yeah, let me clarify that. The water availability model has from the Rio Grande project, it has the historical data in it. But what we've defined as the supply is that lowest year. So of all those other years, they're all in the model. But what we need to do is we need to define what's the yield, what's the reliable supply out of that project. And that's how we define it. So it's not that it's not available at other times. It is, and certainly certainly it is available. It's just how we define that supply.
Yeah, so it would be the lowest, and obviously zero would be the worst case. But that's all contingent on Mother Nature. And as of now, 2013 would be the lowest ever recorded on record since the project started in 1906, which would be a 6-inch allocation. We hope to never go below that, but again, I mean, I guess for now, what you're asking, I mean, that would be the absolute lowest. So I see. So you would use that number. That's fair enough.
We have a motion and a second, and we've had discussion. Are we in favor to?
I would remove my second.
I was just gonna say, Mr. Chairman, that we could either withdraw the motion in the second, or we could vote on it, vote it down, and then have a new motion in a second, whatever the pleasure of the chair is.
I think we need to do what you just said. Vote it down and then re-motion. I just made up a word. Re-motion. So, all in favor of, oh, we need a motion to reject this.
No, you gotta vote on the motion on the.
Oh, we're gonna vote. Okay, so we had our discussion. All in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion is rejected.
I mean, we accept his variance requests.
So you make a motion to that? Okay, I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Okay, I would just add a comment that when we start talking about water rights, return flows, Rio Grande, Fort Quitman, it is complicated. And I don't want to minimize anybody's questions or concerns. I think it shows that this is a good planning group. But I think to try to learn everything John's been doing the last 15 years in 10 minutes is a stretch. So I think that with the patience of Frieza Nichols and Juan, that think of it as a challenge to educate us more, myself included, on the importance of this. I'll add one further comment, and that is, I don't understand what surface water is used for in Region E for water supply below Fort Quitman. And we don't have any, there's no water treatment plants down there, but on the Rio Grande. That's how I think of using it. But how, and that's something we can all learn about. How is the Rio Grande as a water resource used in those lower counties of the Region E? Like Marfa, how does Marfa use the Rio Grande? And they don't, right? So that's something I think, and I heard it asked here, how is the Rio Grande used?
Speak to that.
Yes.
And speaking from the environment chair, it's used a lot supporting migratory bird habitat in the Kendall area of City Orange. It's pumped from the river to irrigate the Cottonwoods at Cottonwood Campground and at Rio Grande Village. It's pumped from the river to, I believe they're using it on the golf courses at Lahitas. They may be using it on groundwater now, but the water rights down there are used.
Okay. So those are TCQ administered water rights. It's not federal water.
Yep.
And so that's why, see, Jay's nodding his head. I think we're all learning something. And I think that's the value of this planning group. I tell people that we have a good planning group and we all learn things. So let's continue learning how the Rio Grande is used in our Region E. I just learned something about that. I think of El Paso's needs only, but there are needs for the Rio Grande below. But I do know that John and WSP is on a schedule to get things going. Okay. That being said, I think we're on to our next topic. Item 8. Item 8 is discuss and consider action on the methodology of identifying potential infeasible water management strategies and review a preliminary list of infeasible water management strategies in the 2021 Regional Water Plan. And this is Juan, WSP.
Thanks, Scott. Just a quick heads up. We won't be requesting the group to take any action on these items. We're just kind of introducing the methodology. No, it's honestly, we didn't have enough of we didn't follow the posting criteria for because some of these strategies, they require a 14-day posting criteria in order for us to consider taking action. So that's why we will defer it to the January meeting. That's right.
This is like
New business, old business.
yeah, new business, and then January will be, okay, let's take action.
Right, exactly. So right now, this my next couple of slides will be just kind of baseline setting as to how we will tackle these next couple of processes within the next couple of weeks / months.
Just make sure, Juan, that we have this distributed to us with plenty of time to review before that meeting.
Yes, sir. No, absolutely, Dave. We'll keep all those suggestions to heart, and we'll make sure to do that next time. Peggy, can you go ahead and move the slides, please? So, okay, now we're gonna start talking about the identification of infeasible water management strategies in the 2021 Regional Water Plan. Next slide, Peggy. So what is an infeasible water management strategy? The Water Development Board defines a strategy as being infeasible if the proposed sponsor of the water management strategy has not taken any affirmative vote or action on this strategy within itself. And this is a part of the definition in Texas Water Code, Chapter 16.053. Right now, we're starting the process by focusing on water management strategies that are coming online in the 2020 decade, according to the 2021 Regional Water Plan. So right now, we're looking at stuff we had already identified as a water management strategy 5 years ago whenever we were going through the regional water planning cycle back then. Next slide. So what are these affirmative steps that we were discussing? And I believe this is a slide that was also on Heather's presentation. So what are some things that an entity? Yes, sir.
Can we skip stuff that we've already seen about 5 or 6 times?
Right, okay.
And move on to what you're recommending?
Yeah. It's
Sure, okay.
It's a strategy that doesn't look like it's feasible. Which strategies in our region do you have your bullseye on?
I hate to have you not use your good slides, but
it's fine. No worries. I get that. Once I saw Heather had the same slide, I realized, oh wait, it's the same. Yeah. So please move forward, Peggy. So something I want to touch base on here, and this is where we can start looking at the handout materials. First, I'd invite the group to look at handout number 2. This is the this is the list of water management strategies that are in the 2021 Regional Water Plan that are scheduled to become online in 2020. So these are all of the strategies that we had. So this is not the entire list of strategies from the 2021 plan. This is just the list of strategies that come online in 2020. So these are the strategies that we will begin the reviewing process of infeasibility. So if you are a water entity and you see that your water entity is on here and there's a strategy, we will start the process of communicating with each entity. We will be making surveys, calls. We want to make sure that any of these strategies, if there's any process that has already been started, any of those affirmative steps that Heather was discussing, like spending money on a strategy, having voted to approve the strategy or allocated funds for it, or if you've applied for a permit, say for example you need to drill a groundwater well, have you talked to the GCD? Have you started that process? So we will be discussing with each of these entities that we have in the table. We will be going by looking through each of the strategies, and like we said, like Heather had said, the water management strategies and feasibility process only needs to be done for strategies that require construction or a permit. So any of the education type of strategies where it's, you're sending out newsletters, these are not necessarily, these don't have to follow through that feasibility exercise. But if you're having say an ASR well, or if you're building a reservoir, something along those lines where you're building something or you need a permit, we will have to consider those for this infeasibility water management strategy process. So right now, handout 2 is just kind of, these are the list of items that we will look through within the next couple of weeks / months. Could we go back to the presentation, Peggy, really quick?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any questions on this list? So this is just the list that, like we said, 2020.
Juan, we don't have any handouts. All we're looking at is what's on the screen. It's a severe eye test.
Okay, my bad. So yeah, so this is just
very small.
Yeah, so yeah, once you have the opportunity to go back and look at the list, so this is just, handout 2 has the list that we initially identified.
Go to the list and zoom in. Maybe we can zoom in at the top and then kind of look through the list.
We could also go to handout 3, Peggy. Handout 3 is the same list, but it's kind of like that first glance review that WSP did. First glance overview of what might be considered to be infeasible versus feasible.
But still, it doesn't really help.
Yellow is potentially not feasible.
Yes. Yellow is if it's identified as infeasible. If it's a no, so no, the ones that are in yellow are the ones that we think are good. The ones that are in red are the ones that we're highlighting that might need to go through this infeasibility process.
Okay, can you just read the names? What's written in red?
Okay, so like we said, this is preliminary. This is not final. This is definitely
Understand.
like our first glance. So for example, we have in the county of El Paso, for the town of Anthony, we have arsenic treatment facility scheduled to come online in 2020 with reduced or with a supply of 2,800 acre feet of water management strategy. It has a cost of about $10 million. This is something that we have to go back and discuss with the town of Anthony. Is this something you've already started the process with? This arsenic treatment facility, they have identified previously when we were coming across with this plan that this is something they were wanting to pursue. So has there been any action taken? Have they spent any money on this? Have they gotten any sort of construction permits or anything along those lines? Additionally, the town of Anthony had a groundwater well that they wanted to drill. This has a cost of about $1 million, no, almost $2 million, with projected supply of 960 acre feet per year. So, like we said, has the permit process even been started? Have they talked to a driller? Have they spent any money? Have they approved any action? So we'll have to talk to this particular entity to make sure whether or not this process has begun or not, and what sort of, if they haven't started any processes, what is their next step? Do they want to then say, hey, let's move the strategy to 2030. We plan on having this groundwater well drilled by 2035 or something like that. Or, let's scrap the groundwater well idea. We want to come up with a new strategy. There's a different sort of water supply that the town of Anthony wants to do now. That's a completely feasible way of replacing this strategy. So, we'll just go down the list here. El Paso Water, another water management strategy that they've identified potentially to be infeasible is advanced water purification at the Bustamante water treatment plant. This was scheduled to come online in 2020 with a supply of about 8,500 acre feet per year in the 2020 decade. Cost of about $100 million, more or less. And, we'll have to discuss with El Paso Water how, if any advancements have been done if any affirmative steps have been taken towards this advancement of the water purification at the Bustamante plant, and whether or not this would be feasible or not.
Is it on the list?
Yeah, it's one of the ones they're planning on being infeasible.
Oh, no, it's completely feasible.
It's okay, well.
I mean, I'm just curious of that disconnect because it's at 95% design. We've got a $20 million.
So you spent money on it already.
Well, so I think what he's saying though is these are just the ones that they need to go.
They need to
ask. Did you?
It's a
spend money?
preliminary, yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
it's feasible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's ones that potentially could be, so they just need to go and say, hey, I did this, guy will say.
okay, so there'll be dialogue with all the water providers on their project.
Oh, absolutely, Scott. We
Okay.
plan on having
All
a
right.
heavy survey push, kind of like we did with the population data.
Oh.
We will do the same we will talk to each individual entity and their corresponding representatives to make sure,
It sounds
what
to
their
me at
plans
this
are.
point like that ought to be yellow anyway.
Right. So yeah, like we said, this was Jennifer's first initial overview. She was just doing this based off of her historical knowledge and just what her interpretation of the infeasibility process was, and maybe her not knowing or knowing whether or not these projects had started. But like we had said, this is just the very first glance. This is not a finalist in any way, shape, or form. But this is just kind of letting the group know how we've started thinking about this process, and we started thinking about ways as to how we can find the answers as to how we will come across this infeasibility process overall.
Are you gonna talk about your methodology, Juan?
Yes. Is there any other questions on the list or on the sort of projects?
Juan?
Yes.
It sounds like a survey is going to be sent out, and a survey will ask a water provider to list what activities have been happening on these projects.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
Michael Flores.
Yes, go ahead, Michael.
So, okay, so Lower Valley Water District, I know that we're not in yellow or in red. were in white. Uh, is, is, is there some way to mechanism, what constituted people to be on the yellow and the red? Is there, do you have something in writing that has that
Yes,
information?
yes, that's a great question, and that also follows with Heather's questions of the methodology of this. If we could go back to the presentation, Peggy, and I think this will help clarify as well some of the. So, like we had said, Michael, this infeasibility strategy process, we have to review for strategies that require a permit or involve construction. And if we look at the Lower Valley Water District, I know we don't have it on camera right now, but for example, the 2020 strategies that you had identified are public conservation education. So this is not a process that needs construction or a permit. It's just you're educating the public as to your water use, so that doesn't fall under the infeasibility review. Same with purchasing water from El Paso Water. That doesn't require a permit or construction. It's just the contract set in stone between you and El Paso Water. So those are not projects that require this infeasibility process. So those that you saw that are yellow or red are the ones that we have gone through that first filter. Do these strategies have any sort of construction or permit requirement associated with them? Yes or no? And if they do, then it's like, well, do we think they've taken any action, or do we not think they've taken any action? That was a recommendation that Jennifer did. But that was just kind of that first step approach. And like we said, we're going to make sure we'll talk to all the entities about all of the plans. So, no stone will be left unturned. And we'll make sure to come back by January with a solidified list and to what actually is infeasible or not, and not just a preliminary approach as to what we're doing right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope that answers your questions. But yeah, that's first step is, like we said, that first filter does it require any construction or permit? Peggy, can we move on to the next slide? So if we've noticed, we've gone through this step, we've looked at the strategies that, do require a permit. Do we know if they've taken any affirmative step towards this construction? It's like we said, like with the El Paso Water at the Bustamante plant, we don't know if the sponsor had taken any affirmative action. So we'll be in communication with the entity. We'll ask this set of questions with the same flow chart that Heather presented. Have you voted to take action on this? Have you received money? Have you gotten your permits? And if you have, then it's considered feasible and we will remove it from the infeasible list. And if you have not, then we will have to follow through the amendment process, which will be then step 3. We can move on to the next slide. So what does the amendment process look like? We're going to have to amend any sort of infeasible strategy. And like Heather said, this amendment could be something like adjusting the online decade, pushing it back a decade or two for when it becomes online. We could also remove that infeasible strategy and we can replace it with a new strategy altogether, or we can substitute it with an alternate strategy that was presented in the 2021 Regional Water Plan, as long as it meets the same need. Additionally, if neither of these work and the entity does not want to have the strategy anymore, we could remove this infeasible strategy from the plan altogether and leave the need as unmet.
So when you expect us to approve these or whatever in January?
Yes, so in January we will have, right now we're letting you know this is kind of like our 3-step approach. Once we will be discussing with each of the entities about their respective plans. So these strategies that are on the list, these were all developed in the previous cycle, and it was the entities, their wishes to have these strategies pursued. So we're just now coming back and just being like, were you able to take any action on these strategies? And if not, then okay, now we're going to have to follow through this infeasibility process. So we're kind of just like level setting with everyone that, if you're an entity on this call, please be aware that there's going to be a survey coming out and we will be in touch with you and we will be asking you about these strategies.
Send me some text.
Can we move on to the next slide? Okay, no, so then that's it. Is there any questions on the infeasibility process?
Again, just the same thing, make sure these things come out well ahead. So we have plenty of time to look at them and discuss them before that January meeting.
Just for our information, so these are posted 3 days before the meeting. Which sounds like it's not enough time. What is a good amount of time for y'all? Like several weeks?
When are you gonna have these narrowed down? After you do your survey?
We will, so the survey, will have the survey sent out either within next week or 2 weeks from now. We will send an email and do phone calls like we have been doing. So multiple ways to try to get in touch with the entities. It really depends on how responsive each entity is. I mean, that really could delay or make the process go by quicker. So if we could have as much you know, engagement from the entities, that would be extremely helpful. But our idea is to have the meeting in January, around mid to late January, and we would present our infeasibility list to y'all within, at minimum, 2 weeks ahead of them. So we're thinking, early January you will have the ability to review the list, and then by mid to late January, you'll have the ability to have reviewed everything. You've had 2 weeks to look at the whole process, and then come to the meeting prepared with any questions or suggestions by that point.
Okay, so we'll plan to have everything out 2 weeks.
Hey, Juan?
Yes.
Juan?
Yes, sorry.
I'm gonna finish coughing. One more
Sorry.
cough.
Sorry.
It's holding it in. Look at it.
My apologies. Yeah, I was eating peanuts earlier and it got cut up in my throat.
Okay. Is the strategy for the surveys, every utility is gonna get a survey and every project is on the presumable chopping block? Or are we gonna get a survey if you've already done a initial reconnaissance and said that project looks infeasible?
So we will do a survey on every strategy that has either construction or permit requirements that are coming online in the 2020 decade. So that's those are that's like the 3 main criteria that we will look in order to begin that survey approach. Because not every entity has strategies coming on in 2020, so we will only definitely focus on the ones that have any sort of permit or construction required, as well as having identified to become online in 2020. And so that's how we will start the process. So definitely not the entire list of entities in the region, but it's going to be a filtered down list. And by the time that the infeasible component comes to play, it'll definitely be an even shorter list come January.
Okay. Very good.
So Scott, I believe that this now is the next item in the agenda.
And no actions being taken on this one, just info.
Correct. That's correct. Yes.
So this is, we are on item 9. Okay. Discuss and consider action on the process for identifying feasible water management strategies in the 2026 plan.
Yes. So thanks, Scott. At this point, I'd also invite the group to look at handout number 4. This is the 2021 feasible water management strategy process. What we at WSP are thinking, in order to come across what we will then do for this current cycle, the 2026 regional water plan, we will follow the same methodology that we did in 2021, except we've added a couple of additional bullet points. Like, for example, the fourth one's at the end. So, any appropriate strategies from the 2021 plan, we'll make sure to keep them in this 2026 regional water plan, as well as include water loss or line replacements. We will have an additional component of like a lessons learned, because right now we don't know what the best approach is to come with new strategies. We'll follow the same approach that we did in 2021, which is, like we said, discuss with each entity what their ideas are for meeting the required needs, and come across, if we have any lessons learned from that infeasible exercise, then we'll make sure to not make those same mistakes within this current cycle, and then not have to do that same infeasible water management strategies process 5 years from now. So this list just kind of, this is the same list that was included in the 2021 plan. So, right now we're not making any changes, but come January, we'll have a lessons learned component to this, and we'll let the group know kind of if there are any differences in any different changes to this feasible methodology.
So this will also be coming up in the January meeting.
That's correct. And as well, the final methodology will be included within that 2-week notice as well. So you will have the opportunity to review what we are recommended to be the feasible water management strategies for this current cycle. So that January meeting will have 2 feasibility components. One is the infeasibility of the 2021 plan, and then what the other component is going to be the feasibility for the 2026 plan. So you'll have the opportunity to review both of those come January. And furthermore, it also helps to say that once we do our survey push for the infeasibility strategies, we can also knock down this feasibility component, because we'll be already talking with the entities about, what plans you wanted 5 years ago. So now we'll be talking, what plans do you have in mind now, and what do you want to do with some of the plans that may be considered infeasible? So that communication will be key between us and each of the WUGs within Region E. But yeah, I think that covers everything on my side, Peggy. All of my presentation. Just letting everybody know kind of this is how we plan on getting the process started for the infeasibility review in the 2021 plan, and we'll follow the same approach for the 2026 feasible water management strategies, except we'll take into account any lessons learned as well. And come January, you'll be able to see the final methodology.
Okay, we're ready for item 10. Discuss authorizing Rio Grande Council of Governments to amend the agreement between the Far West Texas Regional Water Planning Group and WSP for allocation of additional funds.
This is the additional funds that came out of the Senate, that's the 96K.
I think so. Sorry, I'm confused if this is the out-of-state travel.
No, out of state is another item.
Okay, yes, so this is in order for y'all to receive an additional $96,000 from the legislature. You're authorizing Rio Grande Council of Governments to amend their contract with us so we can actually give you all the funds.
There's not a downside to this, is there?
No, here's.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Dave's proud of me.
I like that.
I want to make Dave proud. So put that in the minutes. Dave was proud on item.
Robert's rules of order, right?
Okay, item 11. I'm gonna just read that thing
Here we
here.
go.
Discuss and consider utilizing a portion of the Far West Texas Water Planning Group fund balance to go towards the implementation of a population study for the entire region.
That's the study at UTEP now that they're talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So
Haven't we approved our population numbers?
there is,
You want to talk about what you were talking about earlier about the additional study? So yes, is.
there's some studies that we've submitted information to this point that the TWDB has approved. We've seen those numbers on there. The item before us on item 11 is requesting the COG or the budget to pay for additional studies, i.e. from UTEP, to further analyze population projections to see if there's anything more out there. We're generally, we initially did not like the population numbers, we all know. And then we submitted some information, and El Paso is a little more favorable on it, but the thought is if we El Paso paid for it, a UTEP study. In addition to that, we would get some funding from the COG to provide another population study. I kind of look at it as a second opinion from a doctor.
But we've already approved the numbers. We're not gonna go back and change them with this study, would we?
I believe the answer to that is you don't know what those numbers are until you get them.
If they're better,
Then we could go through amendment process.
So we could change the numbers.
Again, yeah.
it would have to be through an amendment process, and that you could not use state funds for that, because that's.
But I look at in El Paso's in 2080, the population is 1.1 million. In our previous 2021 plan, it was 1.5 million. The numbers,
Alpine's going down.
yeah.
I don't believe that's to be true at all.
So if that
I'm
is,
fine if we can change the numbers again.
You can, but it.
Understand, we'll have to pay for it.
Right.
Well, now, is
So-
Annette still up on the call?
Yeah, Annette, could you better describe?
I think you mentioned earlier, if Annette's still up, I think you mentioned earlier that there might be some funds available to do that.
What she said, well, if I could, memory serves and we can collectively remember maybe. So she was saying that if El Paso was the only county to request this survey, this study, they would pay $52,000. And if they included the entire region of all 7 counties, they would be 65,000 they would contribute. If it's the whole region, it will cost a total of 92,000. So that'll be a difference of 40,000, and we have 47, we have over 47 in our reserve. No, it's to study every region, every county.
Where okay.
For the entire region.
Where does the funding come?
That's what she's.
Well, that's what we're talking about. So El Paso County, if it's the entire region, it'll cost 92,000, and then they will kick in 65,000 because they have a lot
That's
more.
the cost of the amendment.
No, the study.
No, the study. This is the studies.
Yeah, to your point, it's like, okay, so then if the study says, hey, we need to do an amendment, where does that money come?
Yeah.
Then you all would need to work with WSP on what that there were required funds would be to do the amendment process.
And it come back.
Where do we fund that from? Is what I'm getting.
I don't know.
We don't know how much it'll be probably
Yeah.
until,
Does that mean that the whole 96,000 is available funds somewhere right now?
no, that's,
There's 30 missing.
no, there's 30, it'll cost 92. Yeah, there's 27,000, sorry, is missing. Because if El Paso pays 65 into a 92, 27 is the leftover, and then our fund, not our, the planning group's fund balance is 47,000. And so if they can make up the difference of 27,000, we'll still have 20,000 in the reserve.
Okay, so there are funds available to pay
Yes,
for this.
yes, for
Other
the study
than-
only, right,
Other than Texas funds.
right.
Well, you can't use Texas.
I understand, other than, yeah. So there are funds available.
There are funds available, yeah.
Okay.
Still don't see how do we, if the numbers come back and we want the change, and we submit the amendment, how do we pay for that?
Right.
Well,
It would seem to me that the COG would request of the Water Development.
we could not pay for an amendment after it's been adopted by the board.
How do we ever do an amendment then?
The entity works with their contract manager. So for example, Region H is doing an amendment. And that's all being paid for by, San Jacinto River Authority. That's their own funds to do the Region H and
So all the users or people who want their population numbers would have to pitch in. And that's a heavy lift. Yeah, that is.
And that's why El Paso is willing to up their participation.
There's a company.
That's something.
But that's.
No,
that's just
I'm
doing
sorry.
the study,
Yes, right, I'm sorry, yeah,
Not paying.
not for the amendment.
study for the next cycle, because the next cycle is gonna be, utilizing that 2020 census again, right? So one benefit to this is you would have in your pocket a study ready to go for the next cycle, and you can.
We like that idea, actually,
That's a fair point.
that if you pay for the study now, going into the next round of cycle, you might have some favorable numbers to work with. El Paso looked at it and says, yeah, the numbers right now are better. That's not stagnation. It's a little bit of growth. But, you know, we still think if there's any more upswing of population, it benefits us in terms of funding that we get, because people are going to look at those numbers and say, oh, you're not growing or you don't need as much money. Population means money. It means money from the state for water projects and Bureau of Reclamation for funding. And if it says that our population's doing this for the next 50 years, they're going to say, you don't need water projects. You just need maintenance to maintain.
I think they'll get it.
So
we need a motion to utilize a portion of the Far West Texas Water Planning Group fund balance to go towards the implementation of a population study for the entire region.
You have a comment from Juan before you? Juan, do you have
Yeah,
more information?
just adding on to what Heather said, that you could use the study for the next cycle. We could additionally, in this cycle, we know that if the planning group does decide to follow through with the population study, we could always include just a little write-up saying, you know, these are the numbers that were approved. However, the region is still planning on having their own population study being separate. And, you know, if we have numbers by them, we could say that these are the numbers that were included, but we know what is the official population projections for the regional water planning, the regional water plan as a whole. So we could always write just kind of a little side note saying that, you know, there's going to be further studies done, but you know, for the purposes of the plan, these are the numbers that were approved by the board, are the numbers that we will go through only for this cycle only.
Okay, well, I guess I'll make a motion as in my previous narrative. I won't read it again.
Mr. Chair?
Before you make the motion, can I ask a question?
Some questions.
We got another hand up.
question.
Isn't there a census due in 2025?
No.
2030, every 10 years.
Every 10 years.
There's nothing halfway that's done
No.
some sort of a, okay.
So I have one more question before we. Or there's somebody in front of me, maybe.
Yeah, who has the hand up there?
Yeah, well,
Michael?
real quick, yes, Mr. Grijalva. So one of the questions is if the census, if we're contesting the census basically, or the information that's being talked to us with Texas Water Development Board, and you're talking about $90-something thousand for the study. Is the study going to be broken down just basically the basic information that's based on by county, or is there going to be subsets based on census tracts, cities, or towns?
By county?
County, I believe.
They plan to do it by county.
Yeah, I think it's counties.
So if it's going to be by county, you know, then Mike, you know, at least me to believe that we should just wait until the next census instead of using the $90-something thousand with this exercise.
Because we'd have to break it up to our respective water districts.
You have another question?
Yeah. So just to be clear, to get this UTEP to do this population study, we're being asked to take $27,000 out of our little slush fund and put them in El Paso water, and then we'll have 20,000 left.
Right.
In the past, what have we needed to spend money on? So that's only 20, we're spending 2/3 or whatever. Is $20,000 left enough to get us through the cycle for
Emergency transportation, I think.
I don't know about the budget, sorry.
I'm sure reimbursement for transportation is funded out of that probably.
We didn't pay for studies in between planning cycles. We've done water aquifer reports. In the years past, we've done studies kind of complementing the water planning process. I consider this a study that complements the water planning process.
I don't disagree with that. I'm
He's
just,
just asking what has
is
to be
$20,000 enough to get it through the end?
to pay for the rest of it. When is the end of the fiscal year?
I think
not
it's
the fiscal
now, isn't
year.
it? Is it calendar year or is it
When
October, well, September 30th?
How long does those funds have to last?
I do not know the Rio Grande, I don't know what y'all's funding, that's what Annette would be able to answer.
Yeah. See if she's off now.
I
That's a good point.
agree with you that this seems like, that's my only concern is 20,000 is not enough to get us through.
Yeah.
So I just want to be sure that there's enough.
But that 20,000 was extra, is something we weren't expecting to start with.
No.
I think we have a slush fund every time.
Well, and then we're
And that's it. Maybe that's COG money that puts the,
so is this 96,000?
so.
I'm asking.
No. The 96,000 dollars that
We're leveraging.
that you were talking about before. The
Hell of fun.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Is it part of that going to the contract?
You like voting for us? Be sure we.
We've agreed within the contract.
Teresa, do you know where those funds come from?
That's a transfer of
I
funds,
don't.
It
I
is,
didn't know we had them.
but it's not.
Yeah, I've just texted Annette.
I can't speak
It's
to
part
it.
of what we're shipping to the cargo.
Yeah, but that's.
I always thought we were like always running out of funds. So to get a surplus is news to me.
The 10K.
Yeah.
Planning on transferring to on the contract with Colorado.
If that's not available, then we should probably just.
You know, that they have,
I kind of.
I thought there was an intent to transfer 10 of that 96
Yeah,
to them and you approved them.
we did. I think that's because they need.
So we should
But it's not.
understanding it,
It's independent stuff.
money.
So we don't have to take the 10K out of the 20K. It's basically.
Was it seconded?
I wouldn't have a net answer. I don't.
Teresa?
While we wait, I just wanted to express appreciation to Heather Rose and to the Water Development Board. You know, we met a lot of times and our consultants did a lot of work for to change the population demand numbers that we had. And thanks to the Water Development Board for taking that seriously and taking a hard look at it and making those changes. Appreciate that.
I can't take credit for that, though. That was all Katie Dahlberg and Emma Jones, but appreciate it. They worked really hard to get y'all to a place where y'all think it looked accurate. So thank you to Katie Dahlberg and Emma Jones for all your extra work.
Thank y'all.
I put a motion on the floor earlier. It hasn't been seconded.
Second.
Okay,
Okay, any further discussion?
now this is the motion to,
You use the portion.
yeah, utilize a portion of the funds for the study.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Okay, we're on number 12. Discussion of reimbursement of out-of-state travel when necessary to ensure in-person presence at meetings. Who wants to?
That's not up. As far as I understand, that's an allocation of 10K out of the 96K that's coming
Is that it?
from.
This was the out-of-state travel
That was-
for Jeff.
Yeah.
For travel to allow Jennifer to come down from Colorado.
Where does that come from?
It comes out of the 96.
Does it? Okay, that's what I'm,
They're distributing. I just asked.
that was a communication
I
between
would
you and Annette.
specify the 10,000.
Right.
Funds to be transferred.
Her contract says, she wanted to be clear that being in another state, she would be eligible. Their company would be eligible
Reimbursement.
for reimbursement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the motion.
And her comment was, it's just as hard to get from Austin out here as it is.
True.
Southern Colorado.
Yeah.
So,
Teresa has a question though.
I'm sorry that I guess I'm the last person to know, but well, like what's Jennifer doing in Colorado?
We moved there, I believe last year.
Yeah, she got married and she lives in Durango now.
I had no
Um,
idea. Thank you.
It's a result of a marriage.
Gotcha. Okay.
Congratulations to her.
She didn't abandon Texas. She got married.
Okay. Thank you.
I move we approve that.
Okay, that's you're approving the reimbursement of out-of-state travel when necessary to ensure in-person presence at meetings.
I second that.
Any,
Albert beat ya.
Out of state.
Yep.
Out of state.
travel.
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I think we've done 13 already. but I'm not sure.
13. Okay, yes, we kind of went over this. Heather talked about this, get out to vote on November 7th for the new water.
Yeah,
It's, when you get an opportunity to vote on something favorable for the water industry, we should support it.
There's also a park service.
There are like 25 constitutional changes on the ballot. There's a bunch of them. I mean,
There's one to spend $1 billion on parks too.
it's a huge one, yeah.
Oh, maybe they can buy some more land for Big Ben.
Or just parks.
I don't know, yeah, 14 years.
And there is a, Heather forwarded a financial assistance brochure.
Yeah, in case y'all are looking for more information on all of our current funding programs, there's a brochure, and this is available also for download on the website of not just SWIFT, but our environmentally the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, economically distressed areas, or the Texas Water Development Forum, economically distressed areas fund, rural water assistance fund. And hopefully, if Senate Bill 28 passes, there'll be a new water fund. So more funds for communities.
Very good.
I only saw one of those 25 or so that I thought was not very reasonable.
Oh, you looked through all 25?
Yeah, they were in the newspaper here probably a week ago.
Very good. But if you want to know what they are, ask David.
No. Go to the electronic copy of the
Did it like
Times.
that. You're gonna call him, right? Don't call you. Okay, we're on item 15.
Before we get there, can I
Yes.
just share what's, so there is a meeting or summit or a conference coming up called Water in the Deserts that will be held in Alpine. That covers, basically the eastern portion of the region. This is geared towards landowners. It's January 18th. Should be a good little meeting, and I will forward the flyer to Annette. She can share with the group. There'll be more information coming.
Any other public comments? None?
Seeing none, we're on.
Yeah. Let's
Oh, item 15 is consider and discuss a date for the next regular meeting. I have heard late January. Juan, is that favorable for you?
Yeah, mid to late January would be ideal. Also, flexible depends on what the region prefers, but we'll be available whenever.
Okay,
I would hope it's after January 18th.
okay, after January 18th.
Let's coordinate with Annette, please, and give her the window that she can send out on her survey. Can you do that one?
Annette just got on.
Yes.
Maybe we can
And
fix
she
the,
said,
Well, she usually sends that. When is the?
it might be me even,
What
but
day of the week is the 18th?
the 18th.
That's on the Thursday. 18th is a Thursday?
Yeah.
So.
We could do the
19th,
25th, which is
22, so the week of the 22nd would probably be the window sometime.
the January
Week of the
25th.
22nd.
That's what Juan was saying, the 25th. That's the Thursday of that week.
Correct.
And it'll be in El Paso this time,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's what we should shoot for right now.
Just a note, there was a relatively coarse note that came into Annette complaining about scheduling of our meetings and who they were talking to for coordination. She probably needs to check those dates, that date, and see what,
Those other
know,
two
more,
subcommittees.
little better coordination based on that note.
I think the person who wrote that note was at the meeting though, so he could have said something at the time. I
Probably
think.
could have been, yeah, I know.
But that's okay. That's a good note. to
Little
have.
crosswalking, I just pointed out.
Hi, everyone. This is
doesn't-
Annette. Just real quick,
Hey.
I I will send out the doodle poll, but there are many organizations with many meetings and we all are wearing many hats. And so I'll do what I can to ensure that we're not having our meetings at the same time as others. But I think workforce meets quarterly. So yeah, I think it's just an unfortunate coincidence that it happened on the same day.
This sounds like it's plenty far in advance for calendaring.
Yes, yes, it is. But yeah, we'll send out the doodle poll to see what availability is. But since it's so far in advance, everyone's probably going to say, yes, I'm ready. I'm available. So we'll see how that goes.
I just thought that was quite an interesting note.
But that's all I have. Thank you.
I think we're, Albert's ready to give us a motion.
Second, 25th. Oh.
Who's
Oh,
second? Oh,
okay, so we have a motion for the meeting. Then we're on to the.
motion to January 25th.
Let her do her final checks. We're suggesting 25th. We're suggesting the 25th.
Okay.
So
How about you want to move to adjourn?
there you go. That's the
Yeah.
And Jeff, you second?
I did.
Okay.
I don't think we need to discuss it.
Favor?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, very good. Thank you all for a good meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
That
Oh, it's
vote-
just
that
inside,
vote
Jeff.
was
it's just
unanimous.
it's just inside that door in the kitchen.
It was.
Bye, everybody.